Today, I have the specifications for the Canon RS. The Canon RS is the high megapixel version of the Canon 5D SR. That's the DSLR. Now, I do have some problems with these rumored specifications. I'm going to get into that later, but there's a lot of very interesting information here. Now, as far as when this camera is supposed to be coming out, the rumor is still that it's going to be announced on or before CP+, which is going to happen at the end of February to the beginning of March. We had heard some rumors that that might not be until May, and I still have a problem with what this is. I'll get into it in a little bit, but I do not believe that this is actually going to be a high megapixel camera. This could be, I really do believe that based on these specifications, that this camera is going to be what I talked about in a previous video, is the competition to the Sony a7S line. And that'll be very clear very shortly. Let's take a look at some of the specifications. The Canon RS, but it also might be called the Canon R5. We've got multiple sources from this through Canon Rumors, but what's important is, look at the megapixel count there, 45 megapixels. This is not a high megapixel count. This is not high at all. The Sony a7 IV is capable of 60 megapixels. So 45, that's not a huge amount, is it? Sounds like it's more aimed at, well, middle of the road, and I'll get into why 45 is significant in just a minute. This camera will have Ibis. So this is the first Canon camera to have Ibis, which is really, really cool. Now, if you don't have any lenses that have image stabilization, you're going to get 5 stops. But if you have lenses with image stabilization, you'll get as many as 7 or 8 stops of stabilization. So this sounds like it could be a very, very good camera in terms of stabilization. So we'll have to wait and see what that turns out to be. The next thing that we're going to get, well, it's pretty fast. So this is kind of confusing. This is very similar to what we're getting in the 1DX. So we're getting 45 megapixels, but we're getting up to 20 frames per second. Now, the EOS R supposedly had 8 frames a second, but if you turned on continuous autofocus, you're lucky to get 3. So what does 20 frames per second mean? I don't have any other information behind there. I wish I knew more information. Is it really going to get us 20 frames per second with continuous autofocus? I'm a little skeptical. I mean, if this camera gave us 10 frames per second, it would make a lot of sense. And I'm going to get to that in a second. Let's take a look. A few other things before I hit the major news here. The scroll wheel is back, which is really good. And that annoying touch bar that many of us really did not like about the EOS R, it's gone. So that's good news there. Live view movie toggle like the previous EOS DSLRs. And this one does have a slightly large battery. So it's got longer battery life. But it's basically the same size as the previous battery. Now this is where this gets interesting. This camera is supposed to provide us with 8K 30 frames per second in RAW. Yeah, 8K. 8K. Canon is giving us a camera with 8K. The 1DX doesn't have 8K. The 1DX doesn't have 6K. We're getting 8K RAW? So this is where I'm confused. This was supposed to be our high megapixel camera, the mirrorless equivalent to the 5D RS. This doesn't seem like that at all. The more I look at these specifications, the more this looks like it's trying to compete against the Sony a7S line, and more specifically, the a7S IV. 8K RAW. 8K RAW. I can't get over that. Just, is this real? Is somebody pulling our leg here? Well, I'll go back to Canon Rumors, and Canon Rumors did say they've got this from multiple sources. But as always with rumors, guys, they're not facts. I don't present them as facts. But usually there's an element of truth in these things, and usually it can be as high as 80%. If we look at all these specifications together, this does truly look like it's a video camera. A video camera not necessarily for the ordinary filmmaker, but a video camera for people who are producing professional results. I mean, 8K RAW, that would be shocking if it was there. This camera has Ibis. And at 4K, which is kind of the space I want to operate, no higher, we get 4K 120. We get 4K 60, we get 4K 30. There's no mention on crop. I have no idea if there's going to be a crop here at all. I expect there's going to be some crop, or something is going to be done. But you can see I'm confused by this. I just got this information about half an hour ago. I haven't even had time to truly draft it up and present it and give you a truly polished video. But I wanted you guys to have this information in a timely manner. I was actually working on another video, which I'm going to record in a couple of hours, that was due to be out today around 2 o'clock Eastern time. But this camera has me a little bit shocked. I was expecting a high megapixel camera. I was expecting a camera to come with at least 60 megapixels. And I really thought that Canon's high megapixel camera would trump Sony and give us 80 megapixels. I don't think that's very difficult to do with this sensor. So they're giving us 45 megapixels, which is perfect for shooting 8K. That does match up. That does work. And if you can do 8K RAW, then being able to do 4K 120 makes sense. Now, are they going to turn off autofocus? Are they going to give us 4K 120 with a slightly cropped, like a crop factor of 1.15? Who knows? I mean, it's all possible. But this, to me, sounds like it could potentially be a Sony A7S killer, or at least compete with it very well. Let's think about this here. This new camera has access to dozens and dozens and dozens of modern EF and EFS lenses. Although if I was going to buy this camera, I wouldn't be porting over EFS lenses. I'd just be using EF lenses. But you also have access to all those new RF glass, and that too is significant because the RF platform is where Canon is going. It's where all the new development is going. In the video I'm going to release later today or tomorrow, depending on how long it takes to get this video out, I look at the M mount, the EF, or the EF-M mount is really what it's called, the EF mount, the EFS mount, and the RF mount. That's a lot of mounts. That's a lot of different ecosystems. And I really believe that the future is going to be on the RF mount. I'm very curious about this camera. There's not enough information here. There's not enough specifications for me to truly gather who this camera is for. Part of me thinks, wow, this camera's great for me. I don't need the 8K, but 4K 20, 4K 60, 4K 30? That would be really incredible. What is 1080p going to be like? What's the detail going to be like? And that's what really matters to me. It's the amount of detailed information that we have. No matter how good 8K is going to look, I'm not even going to try to process that. But 4K, 1080p, color accuracy, image stabilization, to have that in-body image stabilization for run and gun work, and a smaller body, if you know, to equip this with a 24 to 105 or a 15 to 35, this could be a very, very powerful camera providing us with really detailed video. And yet still give us really good images. I'm really excited by this camera, but I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm very cautiously optimistic because, again, this almost seems too good to be true. We heard the rumor in my latest video where I talked about the Canon A7S III, where I talked about Canon trying to compete with the Sony A7S line, and we are rumored to have the Sony A7S IV coming out relatively soon. So if Canon kind of beats them to the market with the Canon EOS RS or R5, I wonder what's going to happen. Is this... I'm speechless. I really don't know where this is going to go. There's not enough information here, but it is exciting nonetheless. We're going to see the Sony A7S IV come out relatively soon. And maybe Sony will try to release it probably before CP+. I really have no idea. Sony's been very tight-lipped. I'm not even going to try to speculate on when that comes out. But this camera looks like it's purely aimed at the Sony A7S line. It's not really aimed at the Panasonics. Sony is comparable or close to Canon when it comes to autofocus. So let's think about this here. Let's just kind of sum this up a little bit for who is this designed for? Well, 8K video, we're dealing with professionals. We're dealing with people who are buying into the cinema line, buying expensive cameras. 4K, 120, 60, and 30, well, that's everybody else. It's people producing YouTube. That's people producing weddings. The really huge advantage of being able to capture video in 4K is being able to downsample that to 1080p, and you'll get a lot more detail. You can punch into that space so you can create multiple camera angles. If you notice my videos, they're pretty well all shot and I don't zoom in much at all because I'm using this Canon 70D that has 1080p. So I'm limited to how far I can go in without creating blur. And I don't see the point of just zooming in maybe 5 or 10%. To me, that looks like I'm compensating or overcompensating for my technology. But 4K, that gives me a lot more options. It gives me a lot more options when I'm out shooting run and gun work as well. But if the 1080p is really, really detailed, I don't need to do that. I'm puzzled. I'm really puzzled by this. 45 megapixels, that's kind of the sensor size you do need to be able to produce 8K video. 8K, 30 frames per second raw. We'll likely have 24 frames per second as well, and 25 for our PAL cameras in Europe and elsewhere in the world. But this, I know I'm shell-shocked here. I'm just puzzled by this. Again, this rumor that I put out just a little while ago, I talked about 3 cameras that Canon is planning putting out this year. They're all mirrorless cameras. They're all based on the RF mount. And one of them was the one we just talked about, and this is what we thought to be the EOS R Mark II. So to recap a little bit, we're supposed to get 3 mirrorless cameras in 2020. One of them is supposed to be a high megapixel camera. The other one's supposed to be a budget camera that's a little bit cheaper than the RP. And then we're supposed to get a video-centric camera that's going to be competing with the Sony a7S line. And in my last video, I talked about the EOS R Mark II and the video-centric camera are really supposed to be the same thing. So is this the Canon EOS R Mark II? I think this is the Canon EOS R Mark II, their video-centric camera. I don't believe this is going to be a high megapixel camera at all. 45 megapixels is not a high megapixel camera, not today. You need to be pushing 60 to 80 megapixels to capture that crown. Look at the Sony, look at the Panasonic S1 or the S1R. You're able to capture 180 megapixels with sensor shift. Yes, I know it's a bit of a gimmick, but still, we're looking at 60 megapixels now as the new bar set for high megapixel cameras, and Canon's certainly capable of doing that with the RF system. So if these specifications are heading in the right direction, what are we getting here? Well, I think this is our Canon EOS R Mark II. It's a video-centric camera. It's designed to compete against the Sony a7S IV, or the Sony a7S line in general. It will compete very well against the Panasonic S1H. The S1H is a video-centric camera. It does 8K. And it's rather large, and it has a fan in the back. What's the price going to be? Is this going to be $3,000, $4,000, or is it going to be $6,000? That's really going to determine who this is for. As the specs get firmed up, that's going to determine things even more. But if they're competing against the Sony a7, it can't be that expensive. It can't be close to the price of the 1DX. It's going to be more in line with the Sony a7S IV or the Sony a7S III. If you guys have any questions or comments regarding this video, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of comments and a lot of questions, drop them in the comments section down below. I do review all the comments that come in, and I do my best to respond to your questions in a timely manner. If you'd like to receive notifications of new videos as they come out, like this newsworthy item, go ahead and punch that subscribe button, then click the bell icon and choose all to receive notifications of new videos as they come out. As we get updates to this camera and other Canon cameras that are coming out in 2020, as well as other cameras like the Sony a7S IV, I will update you guys immediately as the information comes out. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you soon.